everybody. Welcome to Square Off. Lawrence, you won't be humming "How much is that doggy in the window" when you're looking for a pooch at one big pet store, Shane.
Yeah, that's right, Mark. PJ's Pets has announced that they will no longer sell puppies in any of their stores.
And that's huge news for local SPCAs and humane societies who will be the main beneficiaries of the change in policy.
And maybe, just maybe, this is the beginning of the end for the puppy mill industry in this country. And we'll discuss it later on Square Off.
Well, the beginning of another school year is just a few weeks away, and just as students are preparing to return to their classrooms in post-secondary institutions, a new study says they're taking on more debt but holding off on paying it down.
Here's the bottom line breakdown. According to a Stats Can report, the class of 2005 graduated with student loan debts averaging $18,800, up substantially from $15,200 a decade earlier. In addition, the proportion of post-secondary graduates who owed $25,000 or more on their student loans jumped to 27% in 2005. Now that's up from 17% in 1995.
Joining us today at our Queen's Park Bureau, we have Sandy Hudson. She's the chairperson of the Canadian Federation of Students in Ontario, and next to her, Laurie Campbell, Executive Director of Credit Canada. Laurie, is it just a given these days that in order to graduate from a post-secondary institution, young people are just going to have to go into substantial debt?
Unfortunately, many of them are going to have to go into substantial debt in order to get their degree. And on top of that, we're seeing more and more individuals that have credit card debt on top of that student loan debt, so it's multiplied.
Credit card debt, well, that comes from where? The banks?
From the banks. There's a lot of student cards that students can get over the years, and we see people, for example, that come in with $18,000, $20,000 in student loan debt, and then with $5,000 to $6,000 in credit card debt. So individuals are coming out of school. The job prospects, of course, we know are minimal, not necessarily what they hope to make in their field, and on top of that, they're trying to deal with these massive debts.
Sandy, is the cost of a higher education keeping many young people from achieving their potential? And do we, in fact, know how many are actually quitting after a year or two because they can't cope with the debt and the stress of managing studies and budgets?
Absolutely. The bottom line is that tuition fees are far too high, and that's, if we look at Stats Canada data, the #1 reason why people don't finish school or don't even go to school is because they cannot afford the astronomical cost. And so, yes, it does keep many people from attaining a post-secondary education, even though that they would love to do so.
Sandy, would you be in favor of some type of orientation prior to students beginning post-secondary to warn them of the financial pitfalls that could befall them, not just with tuition, but just with managing your money, having a swipe card and, to get your food or your coffee or whatever? Because I find, and my son is going into his second year of college, that once you're there and you're going to your classes, you really aren't thinking of money, and it's easy to overspend or spend money that you don't have. Would you suggest some type of an orientation prior to school?
Well, you know what? By and large, the problem isn't that students don't know how to spend money. That is not the problem. By and large, the problem is that tuition fees are too high and students don't have access to money to pay for school, to pay for food, to pay for all the books, to pay for all the things that a student needs to live and to study. So I think that if we want to hit the root of the problem, what we're going to need to do is just straight up reduce or freeze tuition fees. That is what the government needs to do. And I think going into a provincial election, if they want to capture the votes of students and students are paying attention, what they're going to have to do is promise those two things.
Well, Laurie, I know that it's not just the students who are facing this debt, it's their parents as well, because they'll tend to co-sign for a lot of these loans or whatever.
Exactly.
Are you seeing the parents going under, trying to pay off the debts of their young ones?
Oh, absolutely. We're dealing with a lot of individuals in the South generation as well. So they've got students going to school, and they've also got elderly parents that they're dealing with themselves. So there's no doubt the pressure on parents to help their children finance school is astronomical. Now, to your point on whether students should be educated, I'm a big believer in education, not just for getting through these very hard times because tuition is too high, but also to help them through their life, because these foundations of financial literacy and financial education are important for people throughout their lives, and having that foundation is going to help them for many years to come if they get it early.
Sandy, how would you suggest that we lower tuition fees? I mean, it's easy to say it's too much money that kids are paying to and their parents to attend post-secondary institutions, but how do we reduce the price of tuition?
Especially, and I'm sorry to break in, but especially because every time you freeze tuition, somewhere down the line, it's going to come back and bite you.
Well, I mean, we have to take a look at, historically what's happened, right? It wasn't the case that people were paying 20%, 50% of their whole family income to send their children to school in the past, and that's what people are paying now. What's happened is that the government has stopped putting as much money into post-secondary education now than what they used to do. In the 90s, they were paying for up to 80% of the cost of post-secondary education, and right now we see that in some cases at some schools that's fallen below 50%, and on average it's just above 50%. And so what that means is students are now paying 50% of their education instead of 20%, meaning that as tuition fees are going up, it's not that our institutions are getting more money, it's that students are now paying what the government is not paying. So what I would say is that we need to shift that balance and put more of the money should be a social responsibility from the province.
Laura, we only have about 20 seconds left, and I wanted to get this from you. How many young people are you seeing coming in saying, I can't do it, I just can't make it anymore, I'm going to graduate and I'm going to have to go bankrupt?
Right. Well, it's a growing phenomenon. Unfortunately, they can't go bankrupt, or they can't have their student loan discharged for 7 years from date of completion or leaving school. So that is problematic for them. So they're in a limbo. They're in it's a big problem. I'd say 20% and rising as one of our greatest population growths at Credit Canada.
Ladies, thanks so much for your participation today. Laurie Campbell and Sandy Hudson, have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.